Hi, everyone. So today I'm going to read a letter by Emma Goldman. Emma Goldman was a writer for anarchism. Or anarchy. There's a lot of interesting things about her that I'm going to be discussing in the upcoming weeks. But just to explain why I'm doing this is because a lot of people assume that the issue with Palestinians is about racism, and maybe that is a component to it. But to a large extent, this is mostly about statism. The question becomes, can people have rights without a state? And because the Palestinians don't have a state, they are largely regarded as savages, right? Because even Jean-Jacques Rousseau explained it in A Social Contract. There's a civil religion. And and I've been called a savage, right? Now, there's a modern term to that. We're called noble savages. The notion that you can actually be a good person without a state, without the government telling you the difference between right and wrong. And because the Palestinians don't have a state, the international community, to a large extent, does not recognize their humanity. And I've explained that when I was talking about Jean-Jacques Rousseau. So clearly, Emma Goldstein um, was influenced by Jean-Jacques Rousseau. But I'm going to go ahead and get started. This was a letter that she wrote, which was in 1938, before the founding or before the inception of Israel. So the version that I had was the actual newspaper article, which wasn't very clear. So I found another version which I could actually read. Okay. So to the editor, Spain and the World, dear comrade, I was interested in an article, Palestine and Social Policy, by our good friend Reginald Reynolds in Spain and the World of July 29th. There is much in it with which I fully agree, but a great deal more which seems to me contradictory for a socialist and a near anarchist. Before I point out these inconsistencies, I wish to say that our friend's article lends itself to the impression that he is a rabid anti Semite. In point of truth, I have been asked by several people how it happens that Spain and the World printed such an anti Semitic article. Their surprise was even greater that Reginald Reynolds should be guilty of such tendency. Knowing the writer, I felt quite safe in assuring my Jewish friends that Reginald Reynolds has not a particle of anti Semitic feeling in him, although it is quite true that his article unfortunately gives such an impression. I have no quarrel with our good friends about his charges against Zionists. In fact, I have for many years opposed Zionism as the dream of capitalist Jewry the world over for a Jewish state with all its trimmings, such as government, laws, police, militarism, and the rest. In other words, a Jewish state machinery to protect the privileges of the few against the many. Now, a lot of people don't understand that a lot of Jews did not support the creation of Israel at the time. Like for some reason, there's this whole monolithic perception about Jews that they're all on one accord, and it's not true. Um, there is a hierarchy within the Jewish community, and not to say that I can speak on the Jewish community, but I can say that the leadership, the those who have a voice, don't necessarily speak for the entire community. Um, there is dissension within that community, and so those elitists who wanted to create a Jewish state, they were doing it for their own benefit. It was not for they try to use the oppression of Jews to try to I don't know, get everybody on one accord, basically to silence any type of dissent. And I think anarchists, all along were against the creation of Israel because we don't believe in statism. And as she's going to explain, we don't believe in private property. So the notion that you could have a state of claiming land and taking it from Palestinians goes against anarchism. Reginald Reynolds is wrong. However, when he makes when he makes it appear that Zionists were the sole backers of Jewish immigration to Palestine, perhaps he does not know that the Jewish masses in every country, and especially in the United States of America, have controlled vast amounts of money for the same purpose. They have given unstintingly out of their earnings in the hope that Palestine may prove to be an asylum for their brothers cruelly persecuted in nearly every European country. The fact that there are many non-Zionist communes in Palestine goes to prove that the Jewish workers who have helped the persecuted and hounded Jews have done so not because they are Zionists, but for the reason I have already stated, that they might be left in peace in Palestine to take root and live their own lives. There were Jews in Palestine way before Israel. They lived in harmony, but they wanted to create a state, a Jewish state, that was exclusive, and that was not what that was not stated originally. The Palestinians welcomed them, they did business with them, and they thought that they were going to be able to live alongside them, not knowing that their land was going to be taken from them. Comrade Reynolds resents the contention of the Jews that Palestine had been their homeland 2,000 years ago. He insists that this is of no importance as against the Arabs who have lived in Palestine for generations. I do not think either claim of great moment unless he believes in the monopoly of land and the right of governments in every country to keep out the newcomers. Yeah, this is a problem. They keep talking about how they lived in Palestine or Jerusalem 2,000 years ago, so they have a right to return. Um, and they don't have any regard for the Arabs who are already there. Surely Reginald Reynolds knows that the Arab people have about as much say who should or should not come into their country as their underprivilege of other lands. In point of fact, our friend admits as much when he states that the Arab feudal lords had sold the land to Jews without the knowledge of the Arab people. This is an argument that the Israelis commonly make, that they did not steal the land; it was bought, it was paid for by Israel. But under anarchism, we don't believe that you can sell land. You can't dispossess people of land just by giving them some paper money and drawing up a title to be recognized by the state. They didn't have any authority to sell it in the first place. The land belongs to the people. So the very fact that it was sold is illegitimate. Um, okay, so the problem is that they're saying that Palestinians don't have rights because they don't have a state. But if that were the case, then the Palestinians who sold the land didn't have authority to do it in the first place. So they're really talking out of both sides of their mouths. Either you recognize the authority or sovereignty of the Palestinian people, or you don't. You can't say that you recognize the selling of the land by a minority of people who profited off the dispossession of their own people, while contemporaneously saying that, oh, those very same people don't have rights because they don't have statehood. You were willing to recognize their sovereignty to the extent that you could buy off their land, but now you're going to say they don't have rights. So this is really paradoxical. It makes absolutely no sense. Okay, so where did I leave off? This is, of course, nothing new in our world. The capitalist class everywhere owns, controls, and disposes of its wealth to suit itself. The masses, whether Arab, English, or any other have very little to say in the matter. Right, you're just a subject, but this only exists under a system of statism. Um, all kinds of abuses of power and tyranny and oppression exists under statism. This would not exist under a system of anarchy. In claiming the right of the Arabs to keep out Jewish immigration from Palestine, our good friend is guilty of the same breach of socialism as his comrade, John McGovern. To be sure, the latter makes himself the champion of British imperialism, while Reginald Reynolds sponsors Arab capitalist rights. This is bad enough for a revolutionary socialist. Worse still is the inconsistency in pleading on behalf of land monopoly, to which the Arab alone should have the right. Um, we don't believe in land monopoly, but if you are going to recognize land monopoly, then you would have to give it to the Palestinians because they were there first. And she's going to explain a little bit more about the anarchist perspective of land ownership. Perhaps my revolutionary education has been sadly neglected, but I have been taught that the land should belong to those who till the soil. This is what anarchists believe, that you can't really own land in perpetuity. You can possess land to the extent that you're making use of it, and we will acknowledge that. But you can't just own land indefinitely and pass title on to children and own land that you're not even using. So you can't own land in different countries and then you come and visit every 5 years and then yeah, we don't recognize that at all. Like, I know that under juridical law, um, there is the concept of adverse possession, but you would have to abandon your land for 21 years and then someone would have to actually occupy it. Then they can adversely possess it. But that's not what anarchists believe. That I mean, if you're not using your property, then you basically don't own it or you don't have any rights to it. So if you abandon, oh my gosh, I mean, first of all, even under juridical law, adverse possession would apply to Israel or to Palestine. That even if Jews were the original occupants of Palestine, through adverse possession, that they abandoned the land for 2,000 years, and now the Palestinians are there. So this is not even under common law, which, by the way, the British gave Palestine to them, which they had no authority to do. So even under the British common law system, Palestinians would have a superior right to that land because it had been abandoned. Let me go back and see if I have any comments. I don't know if anybody's here. Okay. I have two people here. Great. I don't really care if people are here right now during the live stream. The main thing is if you have questions, then you can ask it if you have any input. But you can catch the replay later. So people are saying, oh, I don't have anybody in my live stream. I really don't care. I'm just doing this because this is an efficient way to do it as opposed to doing a pre-recorded video and having to edit it later. Moreover, Reginald Reynolds not only denies the Jews the right to asylum in Palestine, but he also insists that Australia, Madagascar, and East Africa would be justified in closing their ports against the Jews. If all these countries are in their right, why not the Nazis in Germany or Austria? Right. So if you believe that Jews have the right to claim the land for themselves and exclude others, then why couldn't the Germans do the same thing? Right. It's just so hypocritical that they're doing exactly what the Germans did to them. The Germans wanted a country for Germans, and I mean, we see the consequence of that. So this whole racism shit, they're doing the exact same thing. I mean, what gives them the right to have a country that is exclusive for Jews? There is no other country in the world that does that, not even in Africa. We don't have any country for black people. There is no country in the world that is exclusively for black people. No country that is exclusive for whites, Asians. Nobody has the right to exclude others except for Israel. In fact, all countries, unfortunately, our comrade does not suggest a single place where the Jews might find peace and security. Okay. I'm trying to make sure I didn't skip over anything. I take it that Reginald Reynolds believes in the right of asylum for political refugees. I am certain he resents the laws of this great principle once the pride and glory of England as much as I do. How then can he reconcile his feelings about political refugees with his denial of asylum to the Jews? I must say I am puzzled. Our friend waxes very hot about national independence for the Arabs and for all other peoples under British dominion. I am not opposed to the struggle for it, but I do not see the same blessings in national independence under the capitalist regime. All the investment claim for it is like the claim of democracy, a delusion and a snare. Okay, I haven't gotten to it yet, but Goldman, she explains why democracy does not lead to freedom, that basically is just tyranny of the majority. You really don't get any type of social progress through democracy because the majority is anti-progress. The majority basically silences and oppresses the minorities, basically without exception. That you cannot have a free society where the majority controls things. Um, the the notion that democracy leads to freedom is a misnomer, and I really want to get to that. I found that to be very insightful. Okay, I'm going to try to get to that soon because I think that really needs to be addressed. One has to point out some of the countries that have achieved national independence. Poland, for instance, the Baltic states, or some Balkan countries. Far from being oppressive in the true sense, they have become fascist, right? They all democracies are fascist. There's just no way to get around that. America is not supposed to be a democracy. It's supposed to be a Republican form of government. But we have moved towards democracy where it's just pure majority rule. The rights of the minorities don't really see the light of day. Political persecution is not less severe than under the Tsar, while anti-Semitism, formerly fostered from on top, has since infested every layer of social life in these countries. Exactly. You can only have racism, anti-Semitism, gender discrimination. All those things only exist under statism. You can't have that under a system of anarchy. And somebody was telling me that I should be a statist because I'm gay, that if under a system of anarchy I would be, no, 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 no. It's the statists that are oppressing gays. They're the statists that are trying to discriminate against us and deny us the right to exist, the right to marry, to live our lives. You can only do that under the coercive power of statism. And that does not exist under anarchy because we don't believe in force. Let me see if I have any comments. Okay, I'm losing people. Okay, so where was I? Okay, I'm trying to figure out where I started, but it's fine. However, since our friend champions national independence, why not be consistent and recognize the right of the Zionists or the Jews at large to national independence? If anything, their precarious condition, the fact that they are nowhere wanted, should entitle them to at least the same consideration that our comrade so earnestly gives to the Arabs. I know, of course, that a great many of the Jews can lay no claim to being political refugees. On the contrary, most of them have remained indifferent to the persecution of workers, socialists, communists, trade unionists, and anarchists so long as their skins were safe, right? they're not a monolith. There's the elite, and then there's the rank and file. So those elite ones don't care about the middle class and the working class. They're focused on something completely different, and then they use their suffering, which they're not going to be the ones to suffer. It's going to be the rank and file ones who are persecuted while they exploit their persecution to their own ends. Like the middle class in Germany and Austria, they have exploited labor and have been antagonistic to any attempt on the part of the masses to better their condition. Since German Jews had the temerity to say they would not object to driving out the Ostjuden, Jews coming out from Poland and other countries, all that is true, but the fact remains that since Hitler's ascendancy to power, without exception, have been subjected to the most fiendish persecution and the most horrible indignities, besides being robbed of all the possessions. It therefore seems strange for a socialist to deny these unfortunate people a chance of taking root in new countries, there to begin a new life. The last paragraph in Palestine and Social Policy caps the climax. The author writes, "What does it matter who makes a demand or why it is made or who pays the bill if that demand is just? To reject such a demand, to reject a just demand is to brand ourselves as friends of tyranny and oppression, to accept it and to work for it, not only our duty, but the only policy that will expose the pretensions of our enemies." So it actually does not do anything to combat anti-Semitism. So to go along with the Zionist project is to brand Jews as friends of tyranny and oppression, which is what's going on right now in Israel. What goes on in Israel is going to be blamed on Jews everywhere. I mean, she's spot on. This is so ahead of her time that she already recognized that this was going to happen way before 2024. You don't. Well, okay. I think that they know this, but it's like they're just going to double down. They know that if they oppress the Palestinians, other Jews are going to be blamed for it, but then it is going to say, "Oh, well, they're just anti-Semitic," and then they're going to absolve themselves of all culpability. The only thing that really is going to save them is the fact that there are Jews who are speaking out against it. Because if they were monolithic and they did not speak out against the oppression of Palestinians, we would think that they were all on one accord, but they're not. The question is, dear Reynolds, who is to decide what is a just demand? Unless one makes himself guilty of the charge the writer hurls against the Jews, the intolerable arrogance of people who regard their own race as superior. One cannot very well decide whether the demands of the natives for the monopoly of their country is any more just than the desperate need of millions who are slowly being exterminated. So that's the question. The Palestinians have a right to land, and whose right supersedes? The rights of the natives, which are the Palestinians, or those who are in desperate need of their own country because they were being exterminated in Europe. And maybe they do, but why did it have to be in Palestine? That was a strategic move that they made. It could have been anywhere. They talked about establishing a state in Africa. But I think the real issue is that they should have found land that wasn't currently occupied. But they chose to build a nation on top of a nation that already existed. In conclusion, I wish to say that my attitude to the whole tragic question is not dictated by my by my Jewish antecedents. It is motivated by my abhorrence of injustice and man's inhumanity to man. It is because of this I have fought all my life for anarchism, which alone will do away with the horrors of the capitalist regime and place all races and peoples, including the Jews, on a free and equal basis. Until then, I consider it highly inconsistent for socialists and anarchists to discriminate in any shape or form against the Jews. So, the creation of Israel is really just a capitalist endeavor. Like this is, I mean, I think that capitalism and statism are, one and the same. Um, but it doesn't represent the masses. It only benefits the elite. So they're going to make money off of it. And I mean, I guess if you can align yourself with that system and you can benefit from it, then sure, right? But we have people in New York thinking that they have a right to return and they're going to immigrate to Israel, or I should say Palestine, and displace Palestinians of their actual homes, literally evicting people from their homes at gunpoint. And then you're going to feel that that's justified. And the only reason that you're able to do that is because of statism. And then people are thinking that it's just about race. It's not just racism, because if it was just about racism, people would be horrified by that. There would be more of an outcry internationally. But the issue is statism. The fact that the Palestinians don't have a state makes them savages, and it makes them fair game. That they don't have any protection, any recognition internationally. So, I mean, you hear them making this argument that they don't have a state, right? As if that justifies that, because they don't recognize human rights without statism. So, I mean, I've already explained this because Jean-Jacques Rousseau explained all that in the social contract. There's a social contract internationally, and if you don't have a state, then you basically don't have any rights. You're just a savage who can be oppressed. You don't even exist. You don't even see them as human beings. So let me go back. I don't think I have any questions. Yeah, I guess I lost a lot of people. It's fine. Y'all can catch the replay, but I'm going to be talking about Emma Goldman in the future. She's very interesting. I think she was at the forefront of a lot of the issues that we're talking about right now. Very interesting woman. So for those who did not catch this live stream, you can catch the replay, and I look forward to your comments.